Today we'll talk about the alphabet that we use in Russian language. In fact, it is Cyrillic alphabet that is used not only in Russian language, but in other languages as well. In total, Russian alphabet has 33 letters. Our major interest is not only how the letters are written, but also how do we pronounce each of them. At this point of time, especially phonetics will be a key to map Cyrillic letters and Latin letters. Please have a look at the screen. Here you can see letters in two forms, capital letter and small letter. Also, you see transcriptions and some words. These words are not always truly Russian, they are just written with Cyrillic letters. Most of these words are well known all over the world, so I think you can easily recognize them based on my pronunciation. Feel free to repeat with me. Let's start. A. Ankara. Ankara. Capital of Turkey. B. Berlin. Berlin. V. Vienna. Vienna. G. Grodno. Grodno. That's the city in Belarus. D. Dresden. Dresden. Ye. Ye. Yerevan. Yerevan. Yo. Köln. Köln. Ж. Женева. Женева. З. Загреб. Загреб. И. Иран. Иран. Й. Йемен. Йемен. К. Катар. Катар. Л. Лондон. Лондон. М. Москва. Москва. Н. Ницца. Ницца. О. Осло. Осло. П. Прага. Прага. Р. Рим. Рим. С. Сидней. Сидней. Т. Токио. Токио. У. Украина. Украина. Ф. Франкфурт. Франкфурт. Х. Хельсинки. Хельсинки. Ц. Цюрих. Цюрих. Ч. Чикаго. Чикаго. Ш. Шанхай. Шанхай. Letter Sh. This is the only one when I will give you not geographical name but name of soup. I believe that if you are interested in Russian language, then you definitely heard this word before. If not, here it is. Sh. Борщ. Борщ. Then there are two letters that don't have special separate sound, but their functions are to keep previous consonant hard or soft accordingly. That's why these letters have their names, hard sign and soft sign. Hard sign doesn't have any separate sound, but soft sign makes the previous L softer in word Bruxelles. Bruxelles. What is Bruxelles? Brussels. Letter I. Крым. Крым. Letter E. Edinburgh. Edinburgh. U. Юрмала. Юрмала. Я. Ялта. Yalta. Later we'll talk more about consonants and vowels. We'll group some of them in pairs to make it easier to remember all of them, and specifically we'll see that vowels make pronunciation of previous consonant hard or soft. Finally, there is a small self-check exercise for you. Please have a look at the screen, choose the best option, and find correct answers in the comments. As you remember, Russian language is built on Cyrillic alphabet, and this alphabet has 33 letters in total. 21 of them are consonants, 10 are vowels, and 2 more symbols that have no separate sound at all. Now let's talk about vowels. Just as a reminder, vowels are those letters that we can sing. Please have a look at the screen. These are 10 vowels that we have in Russian in that order how they are in the alphabet. But since we are learning Russian through English, we can make a comparison of vowels in these two languages and regroup these vowels a little bit to have some special logic. You may see that every pair in Russian letters has something in common in the way we pronounce them. Often, it's like we add extra sound y in the beginning, right? I would strongly recommend you remember these pairs because this idea is one of the fundamental things in understanding how Russian words sound. Now let's look at the same letters when they are part of the word. A, я, mama, мяу, mama, мяу. In this example, when we pronounce mama, we keep M hard, but when we pronounce мяу, we make letter M softer, and this is exactly because of ya that goes after M. Try it once again. Mama, мяу. Mama, мяу. Same thing you can see in other examples with another pair of vowels. Е, сем, секунда, секунда. И, ты, тигр, тигр. О, мода, мед, мода, мед. Тур, тюльпан, тюльпан. You can see that pairs of vowels create soft and hard forms of consonants that stand in front of the vowel. Does it mean that we have now twice more consonants in the alphabet? No, letters stay the same, but the way we pronounce them may slightly change. Finally, there is a small self-check exercise for you. Please have a look at the screen, choose the best option, and find correct answers in the comments. Once you've learned the first words in Russian, you can immediately try to build small sentences and make simple communication schemes. Please look at the screen. For example, you can practice question intonation and choose pairs of words that you already know. Дантист – это доктор. And your positive reply – Да, дантист – это доктор. Джаз – это паста. And your negative reply – Нет, джаз – это не паста. Don't forget that you need to disagree with the initial question twice, with first «нет» and with second «не». And what if there are two options provided with union «или» between them? Рок – это паспорт или музыка? Your correct answer will be рок – это музыка. Because you choose one of two options provided and because union «или» has meaning «or» in English. And to make this practice even more creative, you can build the following dialects. Please look at the screen. Футбол – это танец? Нет, футбол – это не танец. А что это? Футбол – это не танец, а спорт. You see that this simple dialect becomes twice longer and use another construction that in English can be translated as not something but something else. In Russian, не а. Let's build one more example like this. Журналист – это текст? Нет, журналист – это не текст. А кто это? Журналист – это не текст, а профессия. You see that in this dialect I had to use question word «кто» instead of question word «что» in previous example. Why do I do this? I do this because journalist is a live person. Russian language grammar is built on several major fundamental concepts. And one of these concepts is concept of cases. it is the most scaring part when foreigners start learning Russian, but when you understand an idea of these cases, education becomes much easier. Have a look at the screen. A woman on the shore is writing a letter with a pen to a friend from Moscow. Женщина на берегу пишет письмо ручкой другу из Москвы. Here I have tried to create a sentence that has all 6 cases. Do you see these cases when the sentence is provided in English? But actually, they are all here. Let's define the role of every word in this sentence and map those roles to cases. Женщина. This is a woman. This word plays the role of a subject. That's why it is in nominative case. На берегу. On the shore. This is what? This is current location. That's why this word is in prepositional case. Initial form of word is берег. Пишет. Is writing. This is an action. That's why we don't apply cases here, because it is a verb. Письмо. A letter. This is what? This is an object. That's why it is in so-called accusative case. Initial form of this word is письмо. Ручкой. With a pen. Ручка is a pen. Initial form of this word is ручка. But in this sentence, it plays the role of an instrument. That's why it is in so-called instrumental case. Другу. To a friend. Initial form of this word is друг. And this word plays in the sentence role of a recipient. That's why this word is in dative case. Из Москвы. From Moscow. This is what? This is initial location of that friend. Initial form of the word is Москва. But in this sentence, this word is in genitive case. Each case has its own set of rules defining what do we need to do with the word to let it play a concrete role in the sentence. And this is why we are actually extremely flexible in Russian language with order of words in the sentence. Since form of the word usually clearly says what is its function, then it doesn't really matter where this team member is exactly sitting in the room, if you get this comparison. Of course, there are some preferred ways, but usually it's full of freedom. Please look at the screen. This simple phrase can be pronounced using various order of words. We know this phrase. I love you. In Russian. Я тебя люблю тебя, тебя я люблю я тебя. You see that we are changing the order of words, but the meaning in fact stays the same. All of the sentences are grammatically correct because we have clearly defined subject, form of the verb, and object. Try to say this phrase in different ways to a person you really love. And please find more examples in the comments. Now let's talk about personal pronouns. All our phrases and sentences usually have some object that we describe. If we don't want to repeat name of an object all the times in every sentence, we replace it with personal pronoun. Please have a look at the screen. These are personal pronouns in their initial forms. You may see that we can easily map all pronouns in Russian with pronouns in English. Let's read them. Я, ты, мы, вы, он, она, оно, они. You can see that we have singular pronouns and plural pronouns. Kind of special is pronoun вы that we use when we address a group of people that is next to us or when we address one person with a big respect. Please look at the example. Very simple dialogue when someone is knocking at your door. Кто там? Это я. Кто там? Это я. But when there is a group of people, кто там? Это мы. Кто там? Это мы. Let's imagine that you want to check who is that particular person standing at your door and you have some ideas. Это Шелдон? Да, это он. это Шелдон? Да, это он. Finally, there is a small self-check exercise for you. Please have a look at the screen, choose the best option, and find correct answers in the comments. Now we will build simple phrases when we already have two persons involved. For example, he knows her. Please look at the screen. You may see that in English we don't say he knows she. No, instead we use form of pronoun she that tells who is really exactly doing an action. He plus to know plus she. He knows her. Он знает ее. In another example, he plus to know plus you. He knows you. Он знает тебя. Same thing we do in Russian, but we create another form for all personal pronouns. Have a look at the screen. You see the table where every personal pronoun has its form when a word needs to play a role of an object in this sentence. This is so-called accusative case for personal pronouns. Let's read all of them. Меня, тебя, его, ее, нас, вас, их. With this table, you can build simple sentences when the subject, on, is fixed. And of course, you can add other verbs to similar construction. Please look at the screen. Знает, понимает, спрашивает, слушает. Knows, understands, asks, listens. If we want to ask a question to subject, we say «Кто знает меня?» Who knows me? But if we want to ask a question to an object, whom does he know? We need to say «Кого он знает?» Кого он знает? This shows that question words also change according to the role of a word in the sentence. Finally, there is a small self-check exercise for you. Please have a look at the screen, choose the best option, and find correct answers in the comments. Now we'll talk about gender of nouns. We all know what is gender, and for Russian language, gender is a crucial thing. If we think from English perspective, then we have he, she, and it. And in English language, we need to think first, is object alive or not alive? And second, is it a boy or a girl? Let me call it this way. But in Russian language, usage of genders is much more interesting. Please look at the screen. During the course, we'll use various names of genders, but the meaning will be always clear. The thing is that in Russian, we don't try to find gender features of an object that we describe, but we take care mostly of the word and the way it is written. In other words, gender is not gender of a particular object, but gender of a word. Here you can see some examples. Он. Мальчик – это он. Стол – это он. Телефон – это он. Банан – это он. Китай – это он. Она. Девочка – это она. Чашка – это она. Машина – это она. Статуя – это она. Россия – это она. Оно. Вино – это оно. Окно – это оно. Море – это оно. Солнце – это оно. Монако – это оно. Please have a look at grammar table describing how do we define genders of nouns. You see that the trigger that helps us to define gender correctly is the ending. If at the end you see consonant or letter y, gender is masculine. If it is a or ya, gender is feminine. If it is o or ye, gender is neuter. Tricky one is soft sign. Most of the times we need to learn gender of words with soft sign at the end. Those rules that you see on the screen are general rules, and of course we do have some exceptions. Please look at the comment section under this video to see some of them. And of course, if we talk about international words that come to Russian language, sometimes it's almost impossible to find any gender features. But if you look at banana, for example, and switch your imagination, how do you think? Is it masculine or is it feminine word? If you really will switch your imagination, you will clearly understand why Russian language banana is called banan without last a. Ask yourself if banana looks more like a girl or like a boy. Finally, there is a small self-check exercise for you. Please have a look at the screen, choose the best option, and find correct answers in the comments. Привет, меня зовут Vladimir. What I just said. Of course, I said, hi, my name is Vladimir. But are we sure that translation from Russian is absolutely correct? Please look at the screen. Меня зовут Vladimir. If we'll try to find a word my, word name in this phrase, we'll never find it. In fact, translation that we use is much more translation of meaning, but it doesn't follow direct translation, and that's why it doesn't show the grammar structure. In reality, меня зовут Vladimir means they call me Vladimir, but subject they is just hidden. We have lots of sentences like this in Russian, when we don't specify the subject, assuming that we talk about some regular thing, tradition or habit. Word зовут is a form of verb to call, звать, that is synchronized with subject they, even though it is hidden. Now, using this scheme, you can build phrases and name one or several persons. Be aware that word зовут is fixed, because it is synchronized with hidden subject они. And for any person that you are talking about in this sentence, you need to use accusative case form of pronoun, form of an object. Try it now, and you will come to phrases like Его зовут Петр, ее зовут Анна, нас зовут Иван и Мария, их зовут Борис и Глеб. Asking questions becomes easy. What's your name? How do they call you? In a Russian-style sentence. Как тебя зовут? Is your name Vladimir? Do they call you Vladimir? Тебя зовут Vladimir? The only way to use the speech numbers correctly is to learn them, of course. Now I will simply read you first and second 10 and also major components of big numbers. Please have a look at the screen. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What is important to mention? Digit 1 has gender-specific forms. 1 for masculine words, 1 for feminine, and 1 for neutral. Also, digit 2 has special form for feminine words 2. The way we build second 10 has some logic under it. We kind of put smaller digit on 10, and the word 10 now comes in old-fashioned form цать. Feel free to repeat after me. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. You may see that we make some minor adjustments from initial form that we had in the first 10. For example, in word 4 we have letter E at the end, but in 14 we cut this letter out. When we come to tens, we don't need to put a digit on another one, right? So we don't need to have component na in the word. Also, we are very creative in how do we use this word 10 in the number. Let's read all the tens. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and finally 100. You see that somewhere we use 10 as 10, somewhere as 20, but in word that represents 40, we use absolutely special word 40 that has its own etymology that we can discuss in the comments under this video if you like. But word 90 is already close to 100, right? So we kind of agree with this logic of using word 100 in the word that represents 90. With hundreds, our creativity in ending is even more flexible. But it also has some logic that we'll cover with you only when we come to genitive plural case in A2 module. So far, I would recommend you just to memorize these numbers. Let's read them. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900. And the very last numbers that we'll cover with you now 1,000, that is 1000, and also million and milliard. Now please look at some use cases where you need to use numbers. Сколько стоит вода? How much does water cost? 100 рублей. Ваш возраст? 32 года. Ваш телефон? 8 916 123 45 67. Твой адрес? Улица Тверская, дом 10, квартира 23. Во сколько самолет? At what time is the plane? Самолет в 12. Once there is a need to say that we have something, in Russian we use construction that starts with preposition u. Let's imagine that we build the sentence I have a telephone. Please look at the screen. I have a telephone. In Russian, this sentence will look like У меня есть телефон. Let's look in details what these words stand for. If we directly translate this sentence into English, we'll come to there is a telephone near me. And this is exactly what it means. Translation with verb to have would be more in literary language. But to get the logic of this phrase, I would recommend to remember direct translation as well. Word есть. What it stands for. This word is just simple tense form of verb to be. In English, we have several various forms, but in Russian, especially in present tense, we have only one universal form. And it doesn't matter what are we talking about a live or not alive object, feminine or masculine, one or many objects. Please look at the screen and you can see standard scheme how to build sentences when you want to say that someone has something. If you remember personal pronouns in accusative case that we've learned earlier, you can see that here we have some small adjustment. Letter N has to stand in the beginning of forms его, ее, and их. So we come to у него, у нее, у них. By the way, this is already so-called genitive case of personal pronouns since we use this special preposition u. Now you can be proud of yourself because now you have touched 3 of 6 Russian cases: nominative, accusative, and genitive. But let's get back to telephone and the sentence. У меня есть телефон. What if we need to ask if someone has telephone or not? Or if we want to ask what exactly that person has? One of the ways to build these questions correctly is to slightly rephrase them first to follow Russian style sentence. Here you can see these logical steps. Let's read them together. What do you have? What is there near you? Что есть У тебя. Who has telephone? Near whom there is a telephone. У кого есть телефон? Finally, there is a small self-check exercise for you. Please have a look at the screen, choose the best option, and find correct answers in the comments. We all know that the only way to change our world is to do actions, right? In our speech, we do have verbs that represent those actions. Basic verb is to do, which in Russian has meaning делать. Делать. Please look at the screen. This is so-called infinitive form of the verb. If we try to cut this word into pieces, we'll come to root дел, suffix a, and infinitive ending t. But if we put this word in infinitive form in the sentence, it wouldn't really show us who is making the action. So we need to adjust this word somehow and synchronize it with subject. Based on the subject, we'll adjust the ending of this verb and we'll come to the following form of the verb. Я делаю, ты делаешь, он или она делает, мы делаем, вы делаете, они делают. This process of adjusting the verb based on the subject is called conjugation. And so far, we are talking about present tense only. In this table, we've created kind of a formula how to say verb to do correctly depending on the subject. And similar formula we use for many Russian verbs. Please look at the screen and you'll see some of these verbs that we use in A1 course. Знать, to know, слушать, to listen, читать, to read, спрашивать, to ask, отвечать, to answer, рассказывать, to tell, думать, to think, изучать, to study, понимать, to understand. In order to build simple sentences, we usually need first subject, second verb, and the third object. Here are some examples. You see that in some sentences I have changed direct order of words, and I made it on purpose. This is just to remind you that Russian language gives us this possibility to change order of words and keep meaning the same. Finally, there is a small self-check exercise for you. Please have a look at the screen, choose the best option, and find correct answers in the comments. Now we'll talk about possessive pronouns. Possessive pronouns, for example, in English, are my, your, his, her, and others. We use these words to show who is the owner of some object. Of course, we have similar need in Russian, but since we are really big fans of genders in our grammar, we'll have gender-specific and quantity-specific forms of all possessive pronouns. Please look at the screen. My telephone, мой телефон. My pen, моя ручка. My wine, моё вино. My children, мои дети. You see that form of possessive pronoun is dependent on gender and quantity, because telephone is masculine word in Russian language, ручка is feminine, вино is neutral, and дети is plural word. Now let's have a look at bigger table with all the forms based on the owner. Forms when owner is я. Мой, моя, моё, мои. Forms when owner is ты. Твой, твоя, твоё, твои. Forms when owner is мы. Наш, наша, наше, наши. Forms when owner is вы. Ваш, ваша, ваше, ваши. Luckily, forms that tell us about objects that belong to him, her, and them are not gender or quantity specific. So we have forms его, ее, and их. Его, ее, их. One more important thing is in the first column here. Question whose also have several forms and is pronounced like чей, чья, чье, and чьи. Here are some examples. Let's create simple phrases and make my favorite exercise, that is asking questions to every word in that phrase. Это мой дом. This is my house. Что это? What is this? Это дом. This is a house. Чей это дом? Whose house is this? Это мой дом. This is my house. Это ее дети. These are her kids. Кто это? Who is this? Это дети. These are kids. Чьи это дети? Whose kids these are? Это ее дети. These are her kids. Finally, there is a small self-check exercise for you. Please have a look at the screen, choose the best option, and find correct answers in the comments. Another one pair construction is first and then when you talk about consequent actions or objects. Please have a look at the screen. Сначала завтрак, потом обед. First breakfast, then lunch. Сначала люди думают, потом они говорят. First people think, then they talk. Сначала утро, потом день, потом вечер, потом ночь. First morning, then day, then evening, then night. If you want to add a little bit more emotions into the phrase, you can add "a" in the middle to show that there is not a real conflict, but the situation is different in two parts of this sentence. Сначала он мальчик, а потом он папа. It is pretty useful construction that helps you to split the actions or objects in time. One of the ways to make our communication more colorful is to add emotions. When you are already able to say yes and no in Russian, да и нет, the next level is to show how satisfied you are with this да и нет. Please have a look at the screen. Adverb к счастью is built on word счастье, which means happiness, and preposition к. Direct translation is to happiness, which is closer to fortunately in English. And opposite, к сожалению, that is built on word сожаление, which means pity or regret. In both constructions, we use preposition к, saying that something leads us to happy or unhappy state accordingly. This is why we have this special ending ю in both constructions. К счастью, к сожалению. One more phrase that you may use to show that you are not satisfied with something is как жаль, which is translated as what a pity. You may see that root of word жаль and сожаление is the same. But since time changes and life goes on, situation may also change. And to represent it, you may use words already and still that has meaning in Russian уже and еще. Depending on the context, we can translate word еще also as yet. Here are some examples. У вас есть билеты? Do you have tickets? Да, еще есть. Yes, still have. Ты уже дома? Are you already at home? Нет, я еще не дома. No, I am not at home yet. And if we combine both constructions, fortunately, unfortunately, and already and still, we'll come to more emotional communications. Please have a look at the screen. У тебя есть машина? Do you have a car? Да, к счастью, уже есть. Yes, luckily I already have it. This dialogue is valid when person had a dream to have a car and now he finally bought it. У вас есть деньги? Do you have money? Нет, к сожалению, еще нет. No, unfortunately not yet. This dialogue is valid when person is still waiting for some payment. У вас есть самолет? Do you have an airplane? Нет, к счастью, уже нет. No, luckily I don't have it already. This dialogue is valid when person realized how expensive is it to maintain an airplane and finally sold it out. У вас есть билеты? Do you have tickets? Нет, к сожалению, уже нет. No, unfortunately, already not. This dialogue is valid when someone wanted to buy tickets, but none is available already. In order to describe the way we do an action, we use adverbs. Now we will talk only about those adverbs that answer to question how, which in Russian means как. Please have a look at the screen. Here you can see a set of basic adverbs that we use in daily life. Most of them can describe your general opinion about something or the way somebody is doing an action. Let's read these words in Russian. Translations are also here. Хорошо, плохо. Громко, тихо. Быстро, медленно. Интересно, скучно. Прекрасно, ужасно. Много, мало. Правильно, красиво. Долго, точно. Отлично. Sometimes it's enough to use adverb in the sentence without any adjustments. But of course, just like in English, we have these adjustment words that help us to change the degree. Have a look at the screen. We use не if we want to come to opposite meaning. We use word очень and не очень if we want to add very or not very to an adverb. And if something is extreme, we use word слишком that has a meaning too. Please look at the examples. Как дела? Неплохо. How are you doing? Not bad. Как он понимает русский язык? Я думаю, что он понимает его очень хорошо. How does he understand Russian language? I think that he understands it very well. You see that in this answer, word его refers to language, because language is masculine word and plays a role of an object in this sentence. Как он читает? Он читает слишком медленно. How is he reading? He is reading too slow. Как музыкант играет? Он очень красиво играет. How musician is playing? He is playing very beautifully. Since we are coming closer to dialogue around tenses, it is now time to talk about day of the week. Please have a look at the screen. In Russian, word неделя means week. And you can easily connect this word with the beginning of the week. Monday. Понедельник. You may see the same root in this word. Then we have вторник, среда, четверг, пятница, суббота, воскресенье. Names of days in a week is something that is very stable in all the languages and is based on quite old roots. Let's have a look. What are these roots? Here I have tried to map Russian not only with English but also with Italian. Unfortunately, I don't know Chinese, but it would be great to have this language here as well. You may see that in English and Italian, by the way, in German this is the same and in other languages in Europe, days of the week are very much connected with names of gods from Asian mythology, which are also connected with names of stars and planets. As far as I know, in Chinese, names of days are linked to their ordinal number in a week. And Russian words are a very nice combination of many approaches to naming. Понедельник is the day that is not only the beginning of the week, and week is неделя in Russian, just a reminder, but also понедельник is the day that goes after Sunday, that is a weekend, and we're supposed not to do anything in this day. Not to do equals to не делать in Russian. Years ago, Sunday in Russian had also a name неделя, and it was synonym to воскресенье. Вторник has this name because it is day number 2 in a week. Yes, we do have digit 2, which in Russian means два, but if we use ordinal number, the second, it will be more clear, because the second in Russian is второй. Talking of Wednesday, we can easily map Russian word среда to word середина, which means middle. Четверг и пятница are simple, because they are based on numbers 4 и 5. Word суббота will be absolutely clear for those who know about Jewish Shabbat, because this word definitely has same roots. And Sunday in Russian is the day that is closely connected to Christian religion and resurrection. In fact, we talk of Christ and his resurrection every Sunday, like English speakers talk about the sun. Now please add some words that can help you to practice days of the week. We can start with word сегодня, which is today, and learn words for a couple of days before current day and 2 next days. Day before yesterday is позавчера. Yesterday is вчера. Tomorrow is завтра. Day after tomorrow is послезавтра. You can practice it with the exercise you see on the screen. Сегодня понедельник. Что вчера и что завтра? Вчера воскресенье, завтра вторник. And a little bit more complicated. Сегодня четверг. Что позавчера и что послезавтра? Если сегодня четверг, то позавчера вторник, а послезавтра суббота. We have already covered present tense when we changed ending of the verb based on the subject. Я делаю, ты делаешь, and all these forms. The way to show action in the past is actually very simple and has less options. Please look at the screen. First, you need to define what was the root of the verb without infinitive ending t, and then add small set of letters at the end. If the doer of the action in the past was masculine, you simply add letter L. And in this example, you come to word делал. Since we've learned personal pronouns он, она, оно, and они, you can easily understand why do we add la for female subjects, lo for everything that is neutral, and li for plurals. And this way of adjusting the ending is universal for almost all Russian verbs. Usually in the sentence we have words that help us to define the time. For example, yesterday, вчера. Вчера он работал. Дети вчера играли. Она еще не знала, а я уже знал. And one more use case of past tense is to say that you had something in the past. Please look at the screen. You already remember this construction. У меня есть, that we translated as there is something next to me. Why did we use word есть in this template? We did it because есть is universal form of verb to be in present tense. This is really special verb, but it still has infinitive form that we need to remember. This infinitive form is быть. And like we do it with other Russian verbs, we replace infinitive ending t with correct ending of past tense based on what is the object that somebody had previously. У него был телефон. Был, because telephone is word of masculine gender in Russian. У него была газета. Была, because newspaper is word of feminine gender in Russian. У него было вино. Было, because wine is word of neutral gender. У него были джинсы. Были, because jeans is plural word. Now please look at some examples where we'll combine these two constructions in the past tense. Сегодня понедельник, и он работает. Но вчера было воскресенье, и он не работал. We use было because воскресенье is neutral gender, and не работал because he was doing an action. Вчера была суббота, и мы отдыхали. У нас вчера были гости. We use была because суббота is female gender, отдыхали because we've been doing an action, and plural guests came to us yesterday. That's why we use word были. У тебя есть телефон? Да. А вчера у тебя был телефон? Да, вчера тоже был. This dialogue is about telephone, which has masculine gender. Мы вчера были в кино. Было очень интересно. Here in the second sentence, we use neutral form было because we do not specify the subject and use adverb интересно that describes general state of yesterday's event. I think you remember that we have touched already the topic of accusative case when we had a discussion about subject and object in the sentence «Он знает меня». Here we have subject that is standing in initial nominative case, that's why «он» answers to question «кто», and «меня», form of personal pronoun «я» that is adjusted to represent role of an object in this sentence. Word «меня» is answering to question «кого», question of accusative case. Since we have two different types of words, alive and not alive, we have two kinds of questions. And here you can see that question for not alive object in accusative case is similar to one we had in initial nominative case. Now please look at examples that show how do we change the noun to accusative case. Here we need to be very clear what is the gender of this noun to follow correct grammar rule. This is why we spend so much time focusing on gender at the very beginning of our course. First, we will talk about female objects. If a word in initial form has at the end letter a or ya, we change this ending to u and u in accusative case. It's even easier to look at this in some examples. Это книга. Что я читаю? Я читаю книгу. Это статья. Что я читаю? Я читаю статью. Это мама. Кого я знаю? Я знаю маму. You see that I need to use different questions что и кого, but both times I ask these questions to objects and adjust endings of these words accordingly. One special ending is soft sign for female words. We keep it and not change in the accusative case. Это дочь. Кого я знаю? Я знаю дочь. When we come to masculine, neutral and plural words that are not alive, we ask question что in accusative case, but we do not need to do anything with the word. Я читаю журнал, письмо и газеты. And finally, when we come to masculine and plural words that are alive, we have to use question word кого and adjust the ending same ways like we will do this later in so-called genitive case. Это профессор и студент. Кого слушает профессор? Профессор слушает студента. With plural forms, we'll have with you many different forms, but one of the easiest is the one in the example. Это профессор и студенты. Кого слушает профессор? Профессор слушает студентов. Said that, let's build grammatically correct sentences with different objects. Once again, all these words in brackets are provided in their initial forms. Я начинаю, and then word работа. Что я начинаю? Я начинаю работу. Папа спрашивает, and then question to word дочь. Кого папа спрашивает? Папа спрашивает дочь. Она слушает, and then two types of music, рок и джаз. Что она слушает? Она слушает рок и джаз. Он слушает, and then word music, музыка. Что он слушает? Он слушает музыку. Он отвечает на, and then word письмо. He is answering to the letter. На что он отвечает? Он отвечает на письмо. Мы знаем, and then word дедушка и друг. Кого мы знаем? Мы знаем дедушку и друга. You see in the last sentence word дедушка is one of those exceptions that is masculine word, but we change it the same way like female word. When we have a need to combine into one sentence information about reason of some action and result, we usually use word why to ask question and because to give the answer. Please have a look at the screen. Why in Russian is почему. Because is потому что. And one more word that we use when we swap reason and result in the sentence is word since. In Russian it is так как. Here you can see several options possible to answer the question. Почему ты сегодня не работаешь? Option number 1 to answer. Я сегодня не работаю, потому что сегодня суббота. We use потому что in the middle of the sentence, and we need not to forget to put comma in writing because we talk about two different events. Option number 2. Я сегодня не работаю, так как сегодня суббота. This is absolutely equal construction. Constructions потому что and так как have same meaning. The only thing that is different is that we do not place потому что in the beginning of the sentence, but we use так как instead. Since today is Saturday, I do not work. Так как сегодня суббота, я не работаю. Those words that we call connecting words are usually placed in the middle between two parts of complex sentence, and most of the time connecting words are the same question words that we know. One of the first questions and connecting words that we usually use is word что. We have used this in the very beginning of A1 course, asking what is it? Что это? But when we look at the statements, this word sometimes can be translated as what and sometimes as that. And most of the time, only the context or intonation helps us to define correct meaning. Я знаю, что ты читаешь. I know exact action that you are doing. You are not smoking, you are not writing, you are reading. Я знаю, что ты читаешь. I know that you are reading this exact book and not something else. And here you can see several connecting words that we have learned during the course. Что, what or that, когда, when, где, where, как, how, сколько, how many. It is important not to forget to put comma in the middle of the sentence, because we need to separate two areas of grammar rules in one part and in another part of the complex sentence. Complex sentences help us to make our speech more connected and logic, especially when we want to tell interesting story or to defend our position in the dialogue. Please look at some examples. Мы знаем, где работает твой друг. Когда у меня есть время, я люблю гулять. Они думают, что у тебя есть машина. Вы слышали, что он делал вчера? Он понимает, как это трудно. You may see that sometimes it is possible to swap the order of parts in complex sentence, like in the sentence number 2. But we still need not to forget about comma in writing and some logical pause when we talk. And the last one is an example of complex sentence where we have several connecting words. Когда мы были дома, ты говорил, что знаешь, что когда папа работает, кот всегда играет там, где лежит галстук. Please read this sentence once again to make it clear why we need to have so many commas. Verb to live in Russian is жить. Please look at the screen. Here you can see verb жить, noun жизнь, and an adjective живой. You see that all these words have something in common. However, the consonants that we have in these words are different. How do we change verb жить based on the subject who is doing an action? Let's read all the forms. Я живу, ты живешь, он или она живет, мы живем, вы живете, они живут. You see that we have consonant v in all the forms that was not present in infinitive form. And this is the same letter that we have, for example, in adjective живой. This verb is still considered as verb of type 1, but you realize how different are the endings from initial basic verb делать. Я делаю, я живу. Ты делаешь, ты живешь. Past tense is something that is usually very simple. Like always, we need to cut out the ending of an infinitive form and replace it with l, la, or li, based on the subject and its gender and quantity. Он жил, она жила, они жили. And some examples. Здесь жить очень хорошо. Раньше они жили скучно, а теперь живут очень интересно. Later, we will use this verb to talk about a place where we live, and that word that represents location is going to be in so-called prepositional case, since location is one of the functions of this case in Russian language. I think you remember that cases actually are representing concrete function of a word in the sentence. We had already accusative case with one of its function object. Now we talk about so-called prepositional case and its function location. Question word that we use to ask about location is где, which means where. If a noun that defines location has letter a or ya in its initial form, we need to adjust this ending to have letter ye at the end. If word had consonant at the end, we add letter ye in the ending as well. This is why some of my students call this prepositional case ye case. In fact, it's not 100% true, because we have other endings, for example e for feminine word with soft sign, or even double e in some examples that you see on the screen. Prepositional case has this name because it's used with prepositions. We'll start with prepositions v and na that we can map to English in and on. Have a look at some examples. I live in Moscow. Word Moskva in this sentence represents location, and this is why correct form will be Я живу в Москве with letter ye at the end. We work in the office. Word office is also location, and correct sentence is Мы работаем в офисе. She lays on the bed. Она лежит на кровати. Word кровать is feminine word with soft sign at the end, so we need to use letter e instead of regular ye. He lived in Germany. Word Германия is word with iya at the end, so we adjust this ending to double e. Он жил в Германии. During the course, we usually discuss when do we use preposition v and na, because we have various use cases. Now please look at some dialogue where we have many different locations. Где кот? Кот на кровати. А кровать где? Кровать в комнате. А комната где? Комната в квартире. А квартира где? Квартира в доме. А дом где? Дом в Москве. А Москва где? Москва в России. Sometimes we have a need to say that we've been busy whole day, or all the people are doing some action, or we want to say that everything is great. And to say these phrases, we need to know what the whole or entire in Russian. Please have a look at the screen. Since we may talk about singular or plural objects, you already understand that we need to have gender and quantity specific forms. Весь, вся, всё and все. Whole day, весь день, because word день is masculine word. Whole family, вся семья, because семья is feminine word. Всё время, all the time, because время is neutral word. Все люди, all the people, because люди is plural word. Here are some examples. Вся семья была дома. Все люди – братья. Все хорошо, спасибо. Usually we use these words when we talk about period of time, when we want to show that duration was quite long. Duration is function of accusative case in Russian language. Мы работали весь день. We don't do anything with word весь, because of the same reason why we don't do anything with word день. It is masculine gender and not alive. Все лето мы были на даче. We use все because лето is neutral and we don't do anything with these words in accusative case. В Петербурге мы гуляли всю ночь. Ночь is feminine word, but it has soft sign at the end. It means that we don't need to change this word in accusative case. However, word вся has to be changed to accusative case form, and the form is всю. Once again, в Петербурге мы гуляли всю ночь. When we had a dialogue about verbs, the first tense that we used was present tense. We've learned that we change verb based on the subject. Я делаю, ты делаешь, and the rest. Then we started to talk about past tense, the time we adjusted ending of the verb with letter L and some gender and quantity specific vowel. Он делал, она делала, они делали. Now it's time to talk about future. Please have a look at the screen. Construction in Russian that we'll talk about is very close from grammar perspective to English formula someone will be doing something. It means that we need to use verb быть, which is to be, and also change it based on the subject. So we'll come to forms я буду, ты будешь, он будет, мы будем, вы будете, они будут. And also, we need to add to this construction an infinitive form of the verb that represents real action. One of the examples is here on the screen. Сегодня вечером я буду делать домашнее задание. Today during the evening, I'll be doing home task. Usually, we need to have some words that kind of prove that we use the future tense. Some of these triggers are завтра or послезавтра, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Or words with preposition через, через час, in an hour, через неделю, in a week, через месяц, in a month. You must probably see that this period of time that we need to wait until we start to do an action in the future is in accusative case. Words час and месяц are masculine words and we don't change them, but feminine word неделя we adjust to неделю. Вчера я был в офисе, а завтра я буду дома. Где ты будешь завтра? Завтра я буду дома. You see that in this dialogue I didn't use any additional verb of action, but only verb of being somewhere. Сегодня я работаю дома, а через неделю я буду работать в офисе. Где ты будешь работать через неделю? Через неделю я буду работать в офисе. Буду работать. Complex verb that has two parts. First one is in sync with subject я and tells that action is going to be in the future. And real action, работать, is in infinitive form of the verb. In Russian language we have about 30,000 verbs. And of course not all of them change the same way like basic verb делать. Please have a look at the screen. We have so-called verbs of type 2 that we change slightly different than verb делать. Here you can see an example when we compare the way we adjust any of verb делать and verb говорить, to talk. You may see that infinitive forms of these verbs have different vowels, e instead of a, and this changes the picture. The major difference in the forms that are synchronized with subjects is vowel that stands in the ending. We had letter ye in many forms of verbs of type 1, and now we replace it with letter e in verbs of type 2. Also, you may see that forms for subject я and они have another vowel too. And what's interesting, that not only verbs with letter e in their infinitive ending will be changed like verb говорить. We have, for example, смотреть, to look, стоять, to stand, and even молчать, to be silent, and лежать, to lay, that have letter a in the infinitive form. Once you start using these verbs in the exercises, in the text, and in your communication, you'll feel very comfortable in choosing the correct ending. But at this moment, I usually ask my students to memorize type of the verb, type 1 or type 2. With verbs молчать, лежать и учить, we have some special phonetical story that does not allow us to write letters u and ya after some consonants that you see on the screen. So we need to use their partner vowels instead. Here are some examples. Я говорю, я молчу, я лежу, я смотрю. I had to use letter u instead of u in молчу и лежу. Ты говоришь, ты молчишь, ты лежишь, ты смотришь. Он говорит, он молчит, он лежит, он смотрит. Here everything is universal. Они говорят, они молчат, они лежат, они смотрят. Here again I had to use letter a instead of ya in молчат and лежат. And in many of our exercises we use questions and answers. Once we need to ask a question to an action, the only way to do this is to use basic verb делать in correct form. Что ты делаешь? Я учу глаголы. If you think by chance how many different types of verbs we have in Russian language, I will answer we have 2 types. But we have significant number of verbs that are not regular. But we will learn them anyway in some groups that will make this education a little bit easier. If we talk about English grammar, usual way of making plural word out of singular is to add letter s at the end. In Russian, we have similar general approach with letter y, but it's not the whole story about plural nouns. Please have a look at the screen. If we have singular masculine word with consonant at the end, like телефон or актер, or if we have feminine word with letter I at the end, like mama or актриса, we need to adjust the ending to have letter y, and we'll come to телефоны, актеры, мамы, актрисы. If we have singular word with soft sign, letter y or ya at the end, we adjust this ending to letter e for plural form. Singular рубль and singular кровать come to plural рубли и кровати. Masculine singular музей comes to plural музеи. Feminine words неделя, семья, лекция come to недели, семьи, and лекции. With this, we covered masculine and feminine words, but we also have neutral words with two different types of ending. And the ways to adjust these endings while we build plural forms is on the screen. Letter O has to be changed to A, like we have it in question «Как дела?». In fact, we're asking not «How are you doing?», but «How are your businesses?». Дела, plural word. And letter Е has to be changed to letter Я, like in word море. Море comes to моря. One more thing is some special story with consonants K, G, H, Ch, Ž, Sh, and Sh. If general rule tells us that we need to use letter I, we don't follow it and use letter I instead. Try to say банки for plural banks. It's difficult even for Russians, so we make our life a little bit easier with small phonetical adjustment. Now please have a look at some examples. Here we have a noun in combination with possessive pronoun. You can imagine that we need to think about quantity for possessive pronoun as well when we change a noun from singular form to plural. Let's read all these phrases. Мой телефон, мои телефоны. Наша газета, наши газеты. Ваша кровать, ваши кровати. Их вино, их вина. Его дело, его дела. Твоя ручка, твои ручки. Наш врач, наши врачи. You see that sometimes stress jumps from one position in the word to another, but this is something that comes only with practice. You'll see a little bit later that we have some exceptions from all these rules as well, but we'll talk about them in a couple of weeks. You remember that we have adverbs that answer to question how, как. These are adverbs like хорошо, плохо, быстро, красиво. Also, we have adverbs answering question where, где. These are adverbs like здесь, справа, дома. And one more type of adverbs are those words that answer to question how often, как часто. Please look at the screen. Часто, often, редко, rarely, обычно, usually, всегда, иногда, никогда, always, sometimes, never. With last word никогда, you see не in brackets. We need to have extra part не in all negative constructions. If in English we say I never do this, in this phrase we have only one negative word, never. Then in Russian we'll say я никогда не делаю это. If we'll make direct translation, this will look strange. I never do not do this. And this will change the meaning of initial Russian phrase. Said that, we can confirm that in Russian sentences we multiply the negative parts and still come to negative sentence. This is where language a little bit conflicts with mathematics. And please have a look at some examples. Как часто вы смотрите телевизор? Иногда я смотрю телевизор вечером. Вы всегда так быстро говорите? Нет, обычно я говорю медленно. Ты куришь? Я не курю и никогда не курил. We stopped our discussion about plural nouns with general table that shows how do we adjust ending to come from singular word to plural. You already know that it's not only letter I that we usually use to build plural noun, but also other vowels for concrete genders. These rules were major ones, but of course we do have exceptions. Please have a look at the screen. For example, we have many masculine words that we change by adding letter A at the end. If we have one house, which is дом, regular rule tells us that we need to use letter I and come to plural form домы. In fact, we don't follow this general rule and use exceptional ending A and word дома with stress on the last letter. We use the same approach for words города, cities, паспорта, passports, глаза, eyes, доктора, doctors, and other words that you see on the screen. Also, you may see one word with letter ya at the end, and this is plural teachers, учителя. Why do we have letter ya instead of a? If you remember the idea of pairs of vowels, you'll easily get that. Singular word учитель has soft L at the end because of soft sign, and now we'd like to keep this softness in plural word as well. And to make the story of plural nouns almost complete, please have a look at one more set of exceptions. If we talk about one neighbor, we use word сосед, and general rule tells us that we need to add letter ы to come to plural word. But since this word is an exception, we use the form that you see on the screen. Сосед, соседи. There is also a group of words when we adjust not the ending, but middle part of the word. Дочь, дочери, мать, матери, имя, имена, дерево, деревья. You see that plural form for mother and daughter now looks even more comparable to English or German forms of these words, and we come to almost new words. Some exceptions from neutral gender rules. You know the general rule tells us to adjust O to A, like we do with дело, дела. But here you can see what do we do with apples, ears and shoulders. Яблоко, яблоки. Ухо, уши. Плечо, плечи. If you by chance have seen nice Russian comedies from Soviet times, there was an actor saying ухи instead of уши, and it always makes Russians laugh. Now you can also understand why pillow in Russian is подушка. And the very last group of exceptions. This is the group where we add very special ending while we build plural form. Let's read these forms. Брат, братья. Муж, мужья. Друг, друзья. Сын, сыновья. Дерево, деревья. We had this word before. Лист, листья. Стул, стулья. Since in Russian language we change nouns by cases, of course we do it for singular forms and for plural forms as well. We usually need to remember what is the correct plural form to come to correct endings in different cases also. Please tell me what kind of telephone you have, or what kind of car you drive, or what kind is that person you love. In order to answer these questions, you will most likely use adjectives. You will call your phone new, old, or expensive. You will call your car white, blue, or red. You will answer that your girlfriend is beautiful. Let's have a look how do we say these phrases in Russian. First of all, I need to remind you that we have question word как. This question we use to address adverbs that describe the way we do an action. Now, to ask questions to adjectives, we'll use questions какой, какая, какое, and какие. I think you remember that we had something similar already when we had a dialogue about possessive pronouns. That time we also had gender and quantity specific questions чей, чья, чье, and чьи. If you look at the sentence он работает хорошо, he works well, you'll see that last word is an adverb that describes the action of working. And this is why our question как он работает will have an answer хорошо. Он работает хорошо. But if you look at the sentence он хороший человек, he is a good person, you'll see that an adjective that describes what kind of person he is. And now we need to ask question какой он человек, because we address masculine word человек. In this example, we have ending «и», but in general we have several options of endings for adjectives. What ending to choose depends on the adjective and its type. Yes, we need to memorize at least one of the forms: masculine, feminine, neutral or plural, to make sure that we use correct endings. We have several types of adjectives, and the major difference is if ending is stressed or not, and if we have hard or soft type of consonant in front of that ending. Please have a look at some examples. Молодой, красивый, дорогой, маленький, ранний. Молодой has stress on ой, and based on this initial form we can build all the other gender and quantity specific forms of this adjective. Молодая, молодое, молодые. Красивый does not have stress at the end, and letter V that we have in front of the ending is hard. So we come to forms красивая, красивое, красивые. Дорогой has stress on ой, but letter G is kind of special. We rarely use combination of G and U, so we follow same rule that we had for adjective молодой, but make some correction for plural form. Маленький does not have stress at the end, and letter K is also special, so we have interesting combination of endings of different types. Маленькая, маленькое, and маленькие. The last example is adjective ранний, that means early. You see that here we don't have stress at the end, and we pronounce n in soft way. So we want to keep this softness and come to forms ранняя, раннее, and ранние. Now please have a look at some examples. Здесь очень красиво. Какой это город? Это красивый город. In the first part of the dialogue, we describe overall context and use an adverb, but in the last part, we describe the city and use adjective of masculine gender. Этот телефон стоит дорого. Какой это телефон? Это дорогой телефон. Я читаю эту газету утром. Какая это газета? Это утренняя газета. Какое вино ты закажешь в ресторане? В ресторане я закажу итальянское вино. You see that if you remember roots, major parts of the words that are adverbs, you can build an adjective by adjusting the ending. Once you've learned adverbs and adjectives, you immediately come to a point when you need to say that something is more interesting or less important. And we have universal way to build these phrases. Please look at the screen. Instead of words more and less, in Russian we use более and менее. And also, we need to remember that if we make a comparison, we need not to forget part чем that represents word then. Important difference is that in Russian we need to put comma in front of чем. It is a strong requirement. В Египте весной более тепло, чем в России. Since we talk about general context and not about concrete object, we use here an adverb тепло. Этот телефон менее дорогой, чем тот телефон. We make a comparison of how expensive are two telephones, so we use an adjective дорогой. In both sentences, we use universal construction, and we don't forget to put comma in front of чем when we write these sentences. This comparative rule is universal. However, just like in English, we don't say more good and more bad. We use special comparative forms. Same in Russian, we say лучше and хуже for better and worse. We say больше, меньше for bigger and smaller. We say раньше, позже for earlier and later. In order to make superlative form, we can also use universal word the most. And since we usually need to take care of gender and quantity, we have 4 forms. Самый, самая, самое, and самые. For example, в России самые красивые женщины. You see that we use both words in plural forms, самые and красивые, because we are talking about plural women. Самая длинная река – это Нил или Амазонка? This question is about a river, which is река in Russian. So we use feminine forms of adjective and word самая. And just like in English, we have form the best that has translation into Russian as лучший, with all gender and quantity specific forms. Я слышал, что Москва более дорогой город, чем Санкт-Петербург. Но говорят, что в Москве климат лучше, чем в Санкт-Петербурге. Word city in Russian is город. This is why we use adjective дорогой and parts более and чем to make a comparison. In the second part of the sentence, we talk about climate that is better. So we use word лучше. And again, we don't forget about word чем and comma. Самый лучший день в году – это день рождения. The best day in a year is birthday. Word день has masculine gender, so everything is absolutely obvious here. Word color itself is цвет, and you may see how color is connected with flower in Russian language. Цвет is color, цветок is flower. And we need to be accurate when we build plural forms, because plural цвета means colors, and plural цветы means flowers. Words that we use to name colors are all adjectives. Let's read names of the colors. White – белый, black – черный, gray – серый, red – красный, pink – розовый, yellow – желтый, orange – оранжевый, indigo or blue – синий, light blue – голубой. Yes, we do this differentiation in Russian. The sea is blue, but the sky is light blue. Море синее, а небо голубое. Violet or purple – фиолетовый, green – зеленый, brown – коричневый. Since we talk about colors, we need to talk about rainbow, of course. As far as I know, kids in UK learn special phrase to memorize order of colors in the rainbow. Richard of York gave battle in vain. Similar phrase we have in Russian. Каждый охотник желает знать, где сидит фазан. Translation is, every hunter wants to know where the pheasant sits. Once again. Каждый охотник желает знать, где сидит фазан. In Russian flag, we have three colors. Белый цвет, синий цвет и красный цвет. And if we ever want to use synonym of flag, we say российский триколор. Триколор – masculine word. That's why we use an adjective Russian, российский, with masculine ending. Here, I must point out that Russian as nationality is русский, but Russian as something that refers to country Russia is российский. We use modal verbs when we want to say that we want to do something, we are able to do something, or we have to do something. In Russian we use the following phrases. Я хочу, я могу, я должен. Please have a look at the screen. Every verb needs to have an infinitive form, and я хочу is that form that is already synchronized with subject я. Real infinitive form is хотеть. The way we adjust the verb for singular and plural subjects is a little bit different. Я хочу, ты хочешь, он хочет. But for plural forms, we have the same consonant that we had in infinitive form. Мы хотим, вы хотите, они хотят. You see that verb is changed in two different ways, as verb of type 1 for singular forms and as verb of type 2 for plural forms. the way to talk about our desire in the past is simple. Like always, we cut out infinitive ending and replace it with l, la, or li. The second verb in its infinitive form is мочь. You see that this is a special verb that has infinitive ending that we did not have with you before. Usually we had t and soft sign at the end. Я могу, ты можешь, он может, мы можем, вы можете, они могут. This change that we do between g and zh in the root of the verb is very common for Russian verbs. In the past tense, we little bit stay aside from basic rule and use forms он мог, она могла, они могли. The verb that we use to talk about our obligations is using several concepts of grammar. Major part is word должен that has gender and quantity specific forms должна, должно, and должны. But what do we do if there is a need to talk about obligations in the past or in the future? And this is where verb to be helps us. For example, in the past we use both words and of course synchronize both of them with the subject that had to do some action in the past. Он должен был, она должна была, они должны были. The real action that we want to do, can do, or have to do need to be provided in infinitive form. I like the order of these verbs very much because they kind of represent levels of your mindset, thinking about desires, capabilities, and duties. And then of course going in a spiral on a daily basis. You are a really lucky person if all three verbs are in sync in your life, whatever action you are doing. Now please have a look at the screen and with some examples. Каждый человек хочет жить хорошо. К сожалению, не все дети могут учиться в школе. Ты должен работать, чтобы построить дом. In the sentences we have subjects человек, дети, and ты. Modal verbs are synchronized with the subjects, and all verbs that represent real actions are provided here in infinitive forms. Вчера она хотела гулять на улице, но не могла. А сегодня у нее есть время, но она не хочет гулять. Here we have some verbs in the past tense, and they are also in sync with the subject. Где вы были вчера? Вы должны были быть здесь. Почему мы вас не видели? This is the most interesting and complicated example, where information about our obligation in the past is provided using two words, должны and были. But real action is, as always, in its infinitive form быть. One of the regular verbs of type 2 is говорить. The difference between verbs of type 1 and type 2 is in the way we adjust the ending of the verb when we make synchronization with the subject. Now we'll talk about some special groups of verbs of type 2. Please have a look at the screen. To love – любить, to sleep – спать, to cook – готовить, to save – экономить. These verbs have a lot in common if we look from perspective of grammar. Yes, all of them are verbs of type 2, but also we add letter l to the form of the verb when it is synchronized with subject ya in present tense. This letter l was not present in the infinitive form. However, we need to add this and come to forms я люблю, сплю, готовлю, экономлю. This extra letter l we have only when we have subject ya, but in the rest of the forms we use the ending that you know, regular ending of verb of type 2, for example, говорить. And we come to forms ты любишь, спишь, готовишь, экономишь. Они любят, спят, готовят, экономят. Let's have some examples. Она не любит макароны, а я их очень люблю. Я готовлю макароны каждый день. In this example, word их refers to макароны. Verb любить is synchronized with subject она, and verb готовить is synchronized with subject я. This is why it has letter L in the middle. Когда у меня финансовые проблемы, я экономлю и всегда ужинаю дома. Usually, we use verb экономить without any object in the sentence when we talk about saving money. And in this example, this verb is in sync with subject я. That's why it has letter L. Мой кот может спать весь день. Он спал все выходные и в понедельник опять будет спать. In these sentences, verb to sleep is in infinitive form because it goes together with modal verb. And, once again, in infinitive form because action is in the future. Also, we have this verb in past tense, and the way we adjust the ending is in standard, we just cut out infinitive ending t of verb спать and replace it with letter L because word on represents masculine subject. Negative phrases is something where Russian language is very different from English, and understanding this difference will lead you to better communication and will definitely help you to avoid possible confusions when you're trying to translate Russians directly. Let's have a look at this in simple example. I know in Russian is я знаю, and absolutely clear is translation of sentence I don't know, я не знаю. But once you want to replace subject я with word nobody, in English we need to keep only one word with negative component inside. Nobody knows. But in Russian we still have two negative words. Никто не знает. If you'll try to translate Russian phrase back to English directly, word by word, you'll get almost reversed meaning. This difference becomes even more obvious when we have longer sentence. For example, nobody ever knows, which comes to никто никогда не знает, with three words that have negative component. It is not that complicated, but you need to be aware of that all the times when you use nothing, no one, nowhere, or any similar words. Extreme example is provided below. Nobody ever does anything anywhere. In Russian means никто никогда нигде ничего не делает. If you will try to translate it directly, you will come to nobody never doesn't do nothing nowhere. And in English, it will be not only strange but also wrong. Where we are on the same page and can use direct word-by-word translation, it is positive phrases like все, всегда, везде, все делают. Previously, we had a discussion about several connecting words that we use to merge two sentences into one when we build complex sentence. We had что, где, когда, потому что. Now we'll have a look at the word that means which in English. We use this word in Russian to specify an object by the action that this object is doing or somebody doing with that object. Please have a look at the screen. Connecting word который has all gender and quantity specific forms since it looks like an adjective, right? Let's read all the forms. Который, которая, которое, которые. Since we use these words to build complex sentences, we need not to forget about placing comma or commas to separate parts in long sentence. For example, собака, которая играет на улице, громко гавкает. We can imagine that we have two different dogs, and we want to specify that we are now talking specifically about that dog on the street. You see that we have two commas in this sentence because we include second sentence into the middle of major sentence. Здесь стоят люди, которые смотрят парад. In this complex sentence, connecting word is standing in the middle of the sentence. We have only one comma, and connecting word is synchronized with word that it represents. Люди is plural word, которые is plural as well. One more thing that is important for word который is that it may also be changed by cases. Please have a look at some examples. На улице стоит человек, который часто здесь гуляет. In the first part, word человек is the subject, and word который in the second part represents subject as well. Я вижу девушку, которая играет на гитаре. Word девушку is an object in the first part. However, word которая is in the second part and it's infinitive form because it represents a subject. Он готовит пиццу, которую любят все дети. Word пиццу is an object in the first part of the sentence and should be an object as well in the second part of the sentence. This means that word которая has to be an accusative case and correct form is которую. Кошка лежит на диване, на котором обычно лежу я. Word диван represents location in both parts of the sentence, and this is why we need to use prepositional case not only for word диван, but also for masculine word который. Correct form for this word in prepositional case is на котором. Once again, кошка лежит на диване, на котором обычно лежу я. One of the functions of prepositional case is location, and we had a dialogue about it earlier. Location is not the only function of prepositional case. One more function is so-called function of topic when we use preposition or, that means about. Please have a look at the screen. In order to create a topic, we need to have a verb that requires that topic. For example, we can use verbs говорить, to talk, думать, to think, мечтать, to dream, читать, to read, спорить, to argue. These endings that we use when we have a topic in the sentence are the same as we had for words that represent location. Мы говорим о работе. Мы читаем о любви. Мы думаем о России. Preposition or, that means about, have several forms to support us in pronunciation. Sometimes we add letter b to that preposition to have a phonetic bridge from preposition to word that starts with vowel. Мы мечтаем об отдыхе. And also, we have longer form обо, which is, by the way, very close to English about for some words. Мы спорим обо всем. Let's have a look at some more examples. О чем ты думаешь? Я думаю о жизни. Ты слышишь, о чем они говорят? Они говорят о работе. In this example, word чем is in fact question word что, but just changed to prepositional case. Она рассказывает об отдыхе и обо всем, что видела. Since we covered with you function of prepositional case for nouns, we need to do the same for personal pronouns. Please have a look at the screen. Here you see a structured table with different forms of personal pronouns that are adjusted to show these pronouns in cases. New line in this table has forms in prepositional case together with preposition о. Let's read all the forms. Обо мне, о тебе, о нем, о ней, о нас, о вас, о них. Я всегда думаю о тебе, когда ты далеко. А ты думаешь обо мне? У вас есть дети? Да, у нас уже есть. А у нас еще нет, но мы о них мечтаем. When we talk about locations, we need to use prepositional case. Usually my students call this case ye case, but of course we have not only letter ye at the end, but also e and double e. One more ending is the one that is in exceptional words. Please have a look at the screen. We don't have too many of these words, and mostly these are short words. Here are some examples. Мы гуляем в саду или в лесу. Джинсы лежат в шкафу. Гитара стоит в углу на полу. Ты стоишь на берегу в синем платье, а я на мосту. Мы вчера были в аэропорту. Желаю счастья в новом году. What is also important is that this exceptional ending "u" is used only when we use location function of prepositional case. If we use other function, like topic for example, we still follow regular rule with regular options for ending. Sometimes we may have a situation when we need to force someone to do or not to do some action. And this is when we need to use so-called imperative form of the verb. Please have a look at the screen. In English, imperative form is equal to infinitive forms like do it, move, please don't smoke. But in Russian, we have some special form that is not that complicated, but we need to learn them the same way like we learn all the other forms. Since we can have a request or demand to one or many persons, we have two forms. For verb делать, делай and делайте. For verb говорить, говори, говорите. For verb готовить, готовь, готовьте. You see that we have several options of the ending, and it very much depends on position of stress in the word and type of the verb. Usually, I ask my students to memorize imperative form for those verbs that you may use in your regular life. One of the examples that come into my mind is a film with pretty Julia Roberts. Eat, love, and pray. In Russian, we will have a meaning ешь, молись, люби. Also, we usually say in Russian будь здоров when someone is sneezing. Будь здоров is a wish for health. Every verb in Russian language has its infinitive form, and you already know that sometimes we change part of the root of the verb when we synchronize verbs with the subject. For example, we had it in our discussion about modal verbs. Infinitive form хотеть transformed to form я хочу. We changed letter T in infinitive form to letter Ch in another form. Here you can see another example of similar transformation. Сидеть is to sit. Видеть is to see. Я сижу, я вижу. Ты сидишь, ты видишь. Он сидит, он видит. You see that we have another consonant in the middle of the verb only when we make a synchronization with subject я in present tense. Once there is a need to build sentences with these verbs, we need to take care about cases. If we talk about sitting somewhere, we define a location, and this means that we usually need to use prepositional case for nouns. If we talk about seeing something somewhere, we'll most likely specify an object and location, and this means that we'll need to use accusative case and prepositional case. Дети сидят в классе на уроке. Где сидят дети? Дети сидят в классе. Где или на чем сидят дети? Они сидят на уроке. Он видит подругу на улице. Кого он видит на улице? Он видит подругу. Где или на чем он видит подругу? Он видит подругу на улице. If we have a need to use these verbs in past tense, of course we need to get back to infinitive form and replace infinitive ending with l, la or li. So we need to use regular letter d that we had in infinitive form. Когда она вчера сидела на скамейке в парке, она видела белку. Где она сидела вчера? В парке. На чем она сидела? На скамейке. Кого она видела? Она видела белку. We are coming closer to discussion about various types of verbs that we have in Russian language. There is an approach that we can use to call verbs active or dynamic and not active or static. This difference is very clear when we talk about being at home or coming home. In English language, when we talk about location or destination, we use one question word, where. But in Russian we use two different question words, где and куда. Где мы? Мы дома. Где мы? Мы в доме. Куда он идет? Он идет домой. Куда он идет? Он идет в дом. In these situations, we talk about locations and destinations, and we use different question words где and куда. In order to provide an answer, we can use adverbs дома or домой, or combination of preposition в and word дом in correct case. If it is location, we use prepositional case. If it is destination, we use accusative case. And this logic of static and dynamic actions applies not only to verbs that represent presence or movement, but in many other verbs as well. Please have a look at some examples. Мой друг живет в Москве. Где живет друг? В Москве. Кот лежит на окне. Где лежит кот? На окне. Я обедаю на работе. Где ты обедаешь? На работе. In all three sentences, Москва, окно, and работа represent locations, and we use prepositional case and meaningful question word где. Я лечу в Москву. Куда ты летишь? В Москву. Я смотрю в окно. Куда ты смотришь? В окно. Я звоню на работу. Куда ты звонишь? На работу. In all three sentences, Москва, окно, and работа represent not location, but destination, and we use accusative case and meaningful question word куда. Verb of going is the first one where we touch idea of imperfective and perfective verbs. Verbs that focus more on the process or on the regular action are imperfective, and verbs that focus more on a result or current action with immediate aspect are perfective verbs. Идти is the verb that we use to describe current action of going somewhere. You see that this infinitive form is a little bit special because the ending is t and not regular t plus soft sign that we usually have. We change this verb in the following way. Я иду, ты идешь, он идет, мы идем, вы идете, они идут. Another verb of going is ходить. And this verb we use when we talk about regular action or that kind of going that we can rephrase as visiting some place and come back. Я хожу, ты ходишь, он ходит, мы ходим, вы ходите, они ходят. You see that we make some change in the consonant in the form of the verb for subject я. It's not that difficult what the verb to choose when we talk about going, because usually we have some triggers that help us to define if we are talking about one-time action or regular action. Please look at the screen. Он сейчас идет на работу. We have trigger сейчас, and this helps us to focus on current activity and use verb идти in correct form synchronized with subject on. Мы медленно идем в театр, потому что у нас еще есть время. Here we describe our current activity and the way we do this action. Past tense of this verb is very special, and it has forms шел, шла, and шли. You see that regular logic of ending is in place, letter L, but the root is not comparable to infinitive form of the verb at all. Here is an example. Вчера она шла домой быстро. We have trigger вчера that tells us about sentence in the past tense, and we understand that we focus on one-way direction of going, and that's why we use verb шла. In other examples. Он каждый день ходит на работу. Мы часто ходим в театр. We are talking here about regular or repeated action, and we use verb ходить. Past tense for this verb is built in a simple way that you already know. Раньше мы редко ходили в театр. Important moment is that in all these examples, работа и театр are destinations, and because of that we use these words in accusative case. В театр и на работу. When we do an action, it usually has a reason and result. And when we build communication schemes, we ask question «почему» and provide answers starting with «потому что» или «так как». But if we change our focus from internal reasons and switch it to external aims, we need to use another question word and another connecting word. Please have a look at the screen. Question word «зачем» helps us to clarify the purpose of somebody's action. And connecting word «чтобы» is used to show the purpose as some goal that you can achieve for yourself or for others. Я покупаю продукты, чтобы готовить ужин. Зачем ты покупаешь продукты? Я покупаю продукты, чтобы готовить ужин. In this construction, we can translate word чтобы as in order to. You may see that here the person who buys products and the person who makes dinner is the same person. And because of that, the second part of the complex sentence has the verb in its infinitive form. I do one action because I want to do another action later. Now please look at another pair of sentences. The first parts in both of them are almost equal. However, the subject in the second part of the sentence is totally different. Он много работает сегодня, чтобы завтра отдыхать. Он много работает, чтобы его дети хорошо жили. In the first sentence, we do not change the subject, and we use verb отдыхать in its infinitive form. In the second sentence, we have new subject, дети, and the verb to live is in the past tense, жили. Grammar rule tells us that we need to change the verb into past tense in this case, even though we talk about our aim in the future. Why do we use past tense? One of the explanations is the following. When we do an action to let somebody else do his action in the future, we create a goal. And we assume that this goal is not only achievable, but it is even already achieved. This is the way how we demonstrate our confidence. In our communications, we need to use both strategies, using почему и потому что and зачем и чтобы. Ideal situation is the balance in talking about reasons of our actions and about our goals. If we speak only about reasons, it may look like we are making excuses. And if we speak only about our goals, we may look too selfish. There are several verbs that we use when we talk about trainings or education. The first one is изучать. This is a regular verb of type 1 and we use it when we study something big like foreign language, mathematics or literature. Next verb is учить and it's used in two different situations. When we are in a position of student and we learn something, usually smaller part of something big. For example, only one set of rules or only one poem. And we use the same verb учить in meaning of teaching when we are in a position of a teacher and our object is a live student. The next verb is уметь. This one is almost comparable to I can do something in English, but has a meaning closer to being skilled, because уметь is combination of being able, being taught, and practicing some skills. The last one is учиться. This verb has reflexive component at the end, showing us that this action is mostly focused on the person who is doing the action and not on somebody else. We usually use this verb when we talk about location where we study or if we study on our own, focusing on our personal actions. Please have a look at the screen. Студенты изучают русский язык. Russian language is a big area of knowledge, and we use here verb изучать. Студенты учат правила и новые глаголы. Rules and new verbs together are a small part of big area, and we use verb учить. Отец учит сына и дочь играть на гитаре. Son and daughter want to know how to play the guitar, and father teaches them. We use verb учить in meaning of teaching. Я знаю ноты, но не умею играть на флейте. To know the notes is not enough to play flute. You need to have physical ability, be trained, and practice a lot. So here we use verb уметь. Она учится в университете в Москве. We do not specify here any discipline, and mostly focus on location. So here you see verb учиться. Ты уже умеешь плавать? Нет, я еще учусь. Someone is still in the process of learning how to swim, and since we don't specify any coach and focus mostly on personal activities of a man, we use verb with reflexive component. Я еще учусь. Whenever we use numbers in our speech, we have regular numbers and ordinal numbers. Regular numbers answer to question сколько, and ordinal numbers answer to question какой, and they are very close to adjectives. Let's read major parts of ordinal numbers. If you ever have a need to create concrete ordinal number, you can use the following words as templates. Нулевой, первый, второй, третий, четвертый, пятый, шестой, седьмой, восьмой, девятый, десятый, одиннадцатый, двенадцатый, двадцатый, двадцать первый, пятидесятый, сотый. We use ordinal numbers in many situations and we don't have an option to avoid using them. Нулевой километр. If you ever been to Moscow, you know this starting point near the Kremlin. Первый раз я был в Москве 5 лет назад. In this sentence, we have both words, regular number 5 and ordinal number 1. У меня 42 размер обуви. Размер is size. And since we want to specify what size of shoes we have, we need to use ordinal number and not regular number. Какой вам этаж? 8 этаж, пожалуйста. In this dialogue in the lift, we ask our neighbor about the floor and use ordinal number to specify the level. Сейчас идет 2022 год. Russians would never say that we have year 2022. Instead, we use a long ordinal number. In all these examples, ordinal numbers describe masculine objects – километр, этаж, год. But if we need to talk about the first love, we'll say первая любовь, because любовь is feminine word. Or if we talk about the second daughter, we'll say вторая дочь. This should remind you again that ordinal numbers are very much the same as adjectives, and they have gender and quantity-specific forms. All the verbs have infinitive forms and those forms that are synchronized with the subject. This process is called conjugation. Basic verb that we usually use as a reference is делать, and we have many verbs that we change the same way like verb делать. But at the same time, we have many verbs where we need to remember about some special adjustment during the conjugation process. We've seen this already with verbs хотеть, хочу, мочь, могу, любить, люблю, готовить, готовлю. Now it's time to have another group of verbs. Please have a look at the screen. Вставать, давать, узнавать, продавать, уставать. All these verbs in the infinitive form have suffix va that disappears when we make a synchronization with subject in present tense. Я встаю, ты даешь, он узнает, мы продаем, они устают. Please look at these verbs in the sentences. Обычно в понедельник я встаю очень рано. Учитель всегда дает время, чтобы студент подумал. Умный человек всегда и везде узнает что-то новое. В магазине продают фрукты и овощи. Если мы устаем на работе, мы отдыхаем дома. All the actions in these sentences are provided in present tense, and we don't see suffix va in any of the verbs. However, if we build the sentences in past tense, we need to keep the suffix and follow regular rule of past tense. We cut infinitive ending t and replace it with l, la or li. Раньше он уставал много, а теперь он устает мало. The first part of this complex sentence is in the past because we have clear trigger word раньше. The second part is in present. You see that in the first part we have suffix va, but in the second part we don't have this suffix. Every time when we talk about time, we use various aspects. Sometimes we want to focus on duration, and we need to use construction как долго to ask about duration. Sometimes we need to ask about the moment when some event has started or when it will start, and we need to use question word когда to ask about that moment. In order to provide an answer, we use words через and назад when we focus on future or on the past. Как долго вы здесь живете? Неделю. Когда вы там были? Мы там были неделю назад. Когда он будет дома? Он будет дома через неделю. Initial form of week in Russian language is неделя. It is a noun of feminine gender. All these examples use word неделя in form неделю, since duration and both constructions with через and назад are functions of accusative case. Как долго? Неделю. Когда? Неделю назад. Когда? Через неделю. Verb играть is used in two different situations when we talk about sports game or musical instrument. In these situations in Russian language we use different prepositions and different cases. Она отлично играет. На чем она играет? Она играет на гитаре. We use prepositional case and preposition на, since we are talking about musical instrument. Мы каждую субботу играем. Во что мы играем? Мы играем в теннис. We use accusative case and preposition в, since we are talking about sports game. Раньше она играла в волейбол. Во что она играла? Она играла в волейбол. We use accusative case and preposition в, since we are talking about sports game again. Я почти не умею играть. На чем ты не умеешь играть? Я не умею играть на пианино. Having piano in international word, we don't change the ending, but we still understand that this word is in prepositional case in this sentence and represents musical instrument. These questions that we use, во что and на чем, are actually combinations of case questions and correct prepositions. На чем ты умеешь играть? На гитаре или на скрипке? Во что ты умеешь играть? В футбол или в гольф? Now we talk about another group of Russian verbs that is a little bit specific. You may see on the screen verbs that are very short in their infinitive forms. Мыть – to wash, есть – to eat, пить – to drink, петь – to sing. There are special, not regular ways how we synchronize these verbs with the subject. Я мою, ты моешь, он моет, мы моем, вы моете, они моют. Я ем, ты ешь, он ест, мы едим, вы едите, они едят. Я пью, ты пьешь, он пьет, мы пьем, вы пьете, они пьют. Я пою, ты поешь, он поет, мы поем, вы поете, они поют. Forms of the past tense are organized using well-known and simple way of replacing infinitive ending with l or la. But in the verb to eat, есть, we need to remove letter s as well. Please pay attention that verb to eat has infinitive form that looks very much the same as form of verb to be in present tense. Я хочу есть. I'm hungry, I want to eat. У меня есть яблоко. I have an apple. Both sentences have word есть. In this table you see some words that have similar roots as the verbs. Мыло is soap, еда is food, напиток is a drink, песня is a song. Now let's have a look at some examples. Когда я прихожу домой, я всегда мою руки. Спасибо, все было очень вкусно, но я уже не могу есть. Каждое утро я пью кофе или чай. У меня не очень хороший голос, но я люблю петь. When we say a toast and wish something good, we need to use preposition за, since we use so-called compensation function. Я пью это вино за твое здоровье.